The Singapore Botanical Garden. First, we begin our trip across the globe in Singapore. Within the Singapore Botanical Garden, there are 4 gardens: the National Orchid Garden, the Evolution Garden, the Healing Garden, and the Jacob Ballas Children's Garden. This 82-hectare garden has over 150 years of history to it. The garden is the first and only tropical garden on the UNESCO's World Heritage List. It is the first in Asia and the 3rd botanical garden inscribed in the world. Some key points we will be discussing with you today are the Evolution Garden, the Healing Garden, and the Cool House in the National Orchid Garden.
First on our trip to the Singapore Botanical Garden is the Healing Garden. This attraction takes up over 6 acres of space and contains over 400 medicinal plants. Every one of these plants are found in the region of Southeast Asia, so this garden reflects the medical culture. Several plants featured in the Healing Garden are plants many would not think are used as medicine. Dr. Nigel Taylor, director of the Singapore Botanical Garden, said, "Many plants that have traditional medicinal uses are actually common plants. One of the plants that can be found here is the Madagascar periwinkle. The sap of this plant is used in the treatment of leukemia and lymphoma." The layout of this garden is the coolest part. It's designed to look like a human body. From an aerial view, the region of the bodies show the head, neck, ears, throat, the respiratory system, the circulatory region, the digestive and related systems, reproductive systems, and the muscles, skeleton, skin, and nervous system. Outside of the body are toxic plants. Each plant is placed in the region in which it affects.
Next on our trip is the Evolution Garden. This garden takes its visitors on a trip through Earth's history. At the beginning, people will observe a garden represented by rocks, bubbling mud, and volcanoes. This aims to reflect the Earth when it was hot and unsupportive of life. As the tour progresses, the experience shows what Earth would have looked like during the beginning of life, the invasion of plants onto the land, and the age of cycads. For example, in The Rise of the Ferns, part of the tour showing what Earth would have looked like 300 million years ago, Lepidodendron, an extinct genus of primitive vascular tree-like plants, is simulated as an aesthetic. This plant is now extinct. The cycad stop on the tour features a Vietnamese cycad believed to be over 1,000 years old. This cycad, obviously native to Southeast Asia region, is a good way for this garden to reflect a piece of their culture. The tour of this garden ends in the flowering of the world, showing the extinction of dinosaurs and the evolution of flowering plants. Tours vary based on age of the viewers, young children, and can identify plants in each time period, and college groups focus on more advanced features.
Next on our trip within the National Orchid Garden is the Cool House. The purpose of the Cool House was to mimic a tropical highland cloud forest. For those of you who don't know, a cloud forest can be found primarily in areas with similar climate to South America, but can also be found in Central America, Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Caribbean. There's even a cloud forest on the side of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. Cloud forests often exhibit an abundance of mosses covering the ground and vegetation, in which this case they are also referred to as mossy forests. This is because the forests are generally tropical with an abundance of moisture. The orchid species in the Cool House are grouped based on their origin, either from the Old World, being mainly Asia and Africa, or the New World, also Central America and South America. Not only are there an array of orchids in the Cool House and thousands of orchids throughout the National Orchid Garden, but there are also a number of carnivorous plants. These plants employ different methods of attracting and trapping insects, such as the use of colors, nectar-secreting glands, traps with trigger mechanisms, and pitchers filled with dissolving enzymes. Plants such as these often grow in soil-poor places, thus why their main nutrients comes from the insects they capture. A carnivorous plant you may be familiar with is the Nepenthes species, also known as the pitcher plant. Once the insect falls in, it can't escape, as the inner walls of the pitcher are slippery and the enzymes secreted by the special glands digest the fallen insect. The nutrients are then absorbed through the walls of the pitchers. Now, if you were ever to go and visit Singapore and go to the Botanic Garden, you know what to look for.
The very large Singapore Botanical Garden, comprised of 4 sub-gardens, is home to many features that make it famous. The 3 places which we talked about within this garden are the Cool House, the Evolution Garden, and the Healing Garden. Each of these gardens reflect its own region's native culture and as a result have become great tourist attractions. According to the U.S. News, the number 2 best thing to do in Singapore is visit the Singapore Botanic Garden. People from Southeast Asia and travelers visiting Singapore enjoy the natural beauty of this garden. Both casual naturalists and scholarly botanists come to see the array of flora. Plants and flora are a great way to represent a region, and the Singapore Botanical Garden is no exception. That said, travelers say not to miss the National Orchid Garden for its innumerable floral varieties and breathtaking colors.